and welcome to TrainWorlds Facebook Live, everybody. And today we have the first virtual DCC event, and we got a lot of very special guests today. So we want to appreciate and thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. And the views are going to keep on growing from here, so we're looking forward to it. So for today, we have some of the titans of the DCC industry. We have Frank from Mrc, Matt Herman from ESU, Dan from TCS Train Control System, and George from SoundTraxx, no stranger there. And just want to go around, and if you could all just give a brief intro about yourself and company and name, position, and we'll go around the horn, and we'll start with ESU.
Hi guys, this is Matt from ESU. I'm the general manager now since 2010, so I run the all of North America and Australian side of the company. Handle a lot of the sound recordings that we do here. Work with our employees to do the editing and everything for those sounds here. We work with the manufacturers here. I do a lot of it, the advertising, a lot of training shows and all that kind of stuff too. But you know, a lot of it's the day-to-day business as well. So it's kind of a man of many hats, if you would. Just kind of getting started though. We have a lot going on, a lot coming up this year. Well, it would have been a little bit more exciting, you know, aside from everything going on in the world. But regardless, we've got a lot in production right now, a lot of new stuff in engineering. So should be a pretty good end of the year. We're looking forward to it.
Awesome. And Dan from TCS.
Yeah, thanks for having us here on the show. Yeah, my name's Dan. I've been with TCS for, I believe, over 3 years now. And I do primarily technical support, but I also work with our engineers. I've done a little bit of audio editing myself for some of the projects that we have and some of the sound files we're going to be having on our decoders in the near future. I've also been doing some of our OEM relations lately. So a lot like Matt, I'm a guy who wears a lot of different hats. If there's a job to be done, I'm usually the guy that's tasked to do it. So yeah, we're really excited about our year coming up as well. It's kind of a shame about what's going on in the world right now, but the good thing is that it's given us some opportunities to work on some projects that have been kind of on the back burner or haven't been on the highest of the priority chains. So we're really excited to be, you know, moving here into the end of the year and hoping to have some really exciting products coming up for our customers.
Very cool. And next up, we're going to go with Frank from Mrc. Frank.
Hi, everybody. And Ken, thank you very much for having us today. I think this is a great thing for the industry and for the consumers. I've been in the business for more than 40 years. I was the former president of the company. I have since retired, but thanks to your invitation, I decided to do this, and I'm going to enjoy it. Over the years, I've seen many great innovations in the railroad business, but I think DCC was one of the best innovations. And it all started with a company in Germany. Mr. Lenz of Lenz Systems started it, and he was gracious enough to let everybody use the same concept so that all the systems or all the decoders will work with each other instead of having to go with one brand. MRC has been in the train control business for over 75 years. We still manufacture a line of DC power packs and AC power packs for guys that still want to use voltage as their primary way to make the trains go fast and slow. But we have been in the DCC business for about 20 years, I'd say. And I'll sign off now and get back to you guys when you call me for our products. And thank you.
All right. Sounds good, Frank. And we actually had to drag Frank out of retirement to do this, but Frank was a good sport, and he's actually excited. He misses the hobby, so we appreciate Frank for joining. We appreciate you for joining us tonight. And last but not least, George from SoundTraxx, no stranger there.
Hey guys, George Bogatuk from SoundTraxx. Been working with the company since 2008. So it's been a little over 11 years, been having fun. You know what they always say, when you're doing what you love, you haven't worked a day. And I've kind of felt that way throughout the entire journey here. Our company is actually 30 years old this year. Started back in 1990 as Throttle Up Corporation. And basically Steve and Nancy have been in charge of the company ever since as partners. And they've grown to what we are and one of the leading pioneers in onboard sound systems as we see today. My primary function with the company is dealing with the sales. I talk to retailers, talk to end users, do a lot of the shows. A lot of you guys may recognize me from different shows around the country that we've done. And but also I help out in all the other different facets as well. I've done shipping, I've done invoicing, I've done helping with the engineering department define what certain features are and how they work. Helped out with marketing department deciding what type of campaigns we're going to go on and things that we can move forward with. So, you know, as these guys all do in a small company, we all have many hats that we wear, and it's just a matter of deciding your priorities for the day and trying to get through it.
That's great. Thank you so much, George. And we have people from all over the world tonight. Florida, Scott, thank you for joining. Clayton from Texas, thank you. Just tons of people. So we want to appreciate and thank everyone for joining us tonight. And hopefully all of you guys could get some information out of this, because DCC is a great part of model railroading. You know, a lot of people start off with just standard DC, running the train around the tree, or maybe a small layout. But as you get deeper and deeper involved into hobbies, DCC is one of the coolest and most exciting parts of it. Just operating multiple trains at one time. It's a great thing. So I want to start off by going around, and we'll kind of go in the same order, ESU, TCS, MRC, and SoundTraxx. Why do you guys think that people should try DCC? And Matt, if you want to kick that question off. Well,
I mean, if you think about it in very, very layman's terms, you know, and just for those who may, or I can't imagine these days there's too many that don't know what DCC is, but just the simple fact that you can have that operation of more than one engine going in opposite directions on the same track, being able to control now different lights and sounds within that locomotive independently of one another, I think it just gives you a lot more control. You know, there is the aspect that DCC in some regards can be more complicated than the standard analog, and others, you know, and some of the wiring to the track, if you have a lot of block detection and things like that, it can become a little bit simpler, in fact, but you don't have to worry about the polarities quite so much and things in that nature. But I think it's just more of the ability to control. You can do a lot more automation. That's something that our company does a lot of. You know, we do have our roots in Europe, and Europe tends to be a little bit more advanced in that type of automation technology. They have smaller layouts. They operate their trains different. They're used to short passenger trains instead of long freight trains like we are here. So they can, you know, have a one location where they sit and operate their entire layout, and you know, they enjoy that automation. I'm sure everyone's heard of the Wonderlands over in Hamburg, Germany, and see airplanes taking off and landing and those things. So, you know, that type of control is just, it's more easily controlled by DCC and the things that all of us are doing. So that's, you know, for me, it's kind of one of those things that's hard to go back. You know, once you have that ability and you can see the advantages of it, it's very difficult to go without it.
That's great, Matt. We appreciate that. And how about you, Dan? Why should people try or kind of get into DCC?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all Matt's points. DCC opens up a lot of opportunities for you to be able to have more control on your layout. And if you are the kind of person who enjoys automation, or if you're the kind of person who just likes to have all that control yourself, DCC definitely gives you a lot more options than you're going to have with your typical analog controllers, your DC power packs. You know, it's a little bit ironic, but for the first couple of years I was here with TCS, I still had a DC layout at my house. And recently I updated it to a DCC system, and I'm still using all the DC circuits and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein of a layout, but it makes controlling that system so much easier. You know, you don't have to worry about your reversing loops. You don't have to worry about controlling or powering your specific blocks. Everything all has power. It has power all the time. And you can control each one of your trains regardless of where they are, just from a single controller. That you can even have wireless controllers too. So you don't have to carry a big honking power pack around with you anymore either. And of course, the other thing that DCC gives you that you're not going to have necessarily so much on DC is something like Keep Alive. One of the notorious problems with DC that you run into is you hit a dirty spot, or you hit a turnout and your locomotive stops, and you got to go over there and bump it or run it with another unit to push it through. And with DCC, you have more power on the track, you have a constant voltage, and you have the ability to add on things like Keep Alive to keep decoder powered while you're going through that turnout, while you're hitting that dirty spot and stuff like that. So it's a lot more convenient, I think, is one thing. But it certainly is complicated. If you're somebody who's not particularly savvy with electronics, it might be a little bit of a steep learning curve. But that's why people such as myself who do tech support, that's why we're here. So if you have questions or stuff like that, you know, you're more than welcome to reach out to us at TCS. I'm sure any of the other manufacturers as well would be more than happy to tell you what you need to know.
Yeah, all these guys are great resources. Frank, what do you think? Why should people get into DCC? Why is DCC so fun?
I agree with Matt and Dan that today the DCC systems have really become easier to use. It gives you so much more control. And even if you're not a real tech savvy guy, you can still get into DCC and get more enjoyment out of your layout than you could with just a DC power pack. I mean, just getting sound, basic sounds. If I do nothing more than getting a horn and a bell, wow, I'm far ahead than I was before. And you don't have to get that technically crazy. It's, to me, I compare it to a computer. The first computers that came out, I couldn't use them. I mean, they were just, the software was over my head. But as they became easier to use, I even can use a computer today. And just like DCC, today's DCC systems and the decoders and everything are just more easier to operate, especially if you just want to keep things simple. So I'm a big fan of it. Thank you.
That's very good point. Very good point. And how about you, George?
Well,
George,
I mean, it's hard to say a lot of what they've already said. Are you there? Can you hear me? So it's very difficult not to repeat a lot of the same thing these guys have already said. I mean, giving you that much more control, but I'll add the word realistic control. And because when it comes to a DC power pack, I mean, we turn the throttle, train goes faster, we turn the throttle, train goes slower. It's pretty easy to understand and follow. But with DCC, I can control that train more as if I'm sitting in the cab of the locomotive. And so I'm actually in control of that train, whether it's one locomotive or 5 locomotives, all doing their own thing. And this is where it becomes a lot more fun. Now, when it comes to entry-level DCC, one of the things we're committed to is education and getting people informed on what's actually happening. And because of this, on our YouTube channel, if you search YouTube for SoundTraxx videos, we have a lot of a lot of videos on our webinar series. And in the webinar series, there's a whole video dedicated to just what is DCC. Has nothing to do with my products or anybody else's products. It's just what is DCC, how does it work, and how does it benefit you? And then we have another one on there that's just about the science of sound and things like that. But then there's another one that we put together, and Frank, you'll appreciate this one, is basically we take the 3 major DCC systems and just show you how to use them. MRC is one of the 3 that we highlight in that video. And what it does is it helps give the customer the information they need to be able to then use DCC, because there's a lot of misconceptions that the communication protocol is a lot more complicated than it is. And so what we do is we kind of show the little green man behind the curtain and show what's actually happening so that you can relax and enjoy your trains a little bit more.
That's
I'll
right.
get you a check after this seminar's over.
So.
Well, that's great. Then I'm glad we're all getting warmed up now. And basically for the next portion of the night, we're going to have like 10 to 15 minutes and go through each company, and they're going to talk about some of their newer products or things they want to really highlight and focus on, products that are maybe perhaps their staple in their line, or things that they're really known for. And we'll go through the companies as of ESU, TCS, Mrc, and then SoundTraxx. After that, we'll go over a couple of more questions ending, and I'm sure if anybody posts any questions, because I see Rick actually has a question for Matt from ESU. I'm sure all these guys here may take a peek back after the show, and maybe they'll go back and answer some questions. So feel free to ask away, but don't be offended if we don't get to everyone's questions or responses right away. But I'll monitor it as well and see if we could go back and afterwards and shoot away. But glad to see so many different countries here, and hope everybody out there is very safe and their health is very well. So just wishing thoughts and prayers out for everyone dealing with this crisis right now. But off to the good stuff. So we'll kick it off with Matt Herman from ESU. And Matt's no stranger to our videos and also store as well. So a good friend. And Matt, we'll kick it over to you.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. It's Matt again. We got a lot going on this year. The beginning of last year, we announced our LoSound 5 products, and that's still, our top selling item. That's something that, when we created Decoder, we looked for about a 10-year lifespan on it. And that's something that we probably have a little bit of an advantage of in that, because we have the ability to do firmware updates. So as new features come out, 10 years, if you think about it in computer time, is a long, long time. I mean, just how quickly your cell phone as a computer goes out of date. I mean, every 2 years you're wanting to, some of that's just, commerce, but, there's always new stuff coming out. So, like in that situation, there's always new features. There's always new sounds coming out. So one of the highlights of the ESU decoders, and really the ESU brand, no matter what we make, most everything is updatable. We try to give that feature so that as those new features and new sounds come out, you don't have to go and buy a new product. You can just update the product that you have. We put new sounds out almost once a week now. So whether it be new prime movers, steam files, electric files, we're putting out new template packs for all kinds of new horns. And we do a mix of putting a lot of sounds on the decoder so that you can change with the CV. And we have a library on our website that is constantly added to. So that way we don't really have to worry about the amount of memory in the decoder either, because there is a physical limit of what every hardware can do, especially after that 10-year time limit. The components get smaller, they get larger in terms of memory, and processing power and all that. So that's the one downside of creating something that was meant to last that long, is the faster things get developed, I should say the more things get developed, the faster they develop, especially when it comes to computers and technology. You have more ways to do things now. My brother and I, as a side hobby, we're getting into 3D printing now, and it's amazing how far that technology has come. And we just got a Prusa 3D printer, and we noticed on it almost everything was made from 3D parts. And that's because that technology is able to do things that previous types of injection molding and that just weren't able to do. And the same thing happens with computers and decoders and command stations and all of that. As we come up with new ways to do things, we now have abilities to do other things that we just didn't have before. So, but in that regard, and the memory side of things, we always do keep everything on our website or have a library that we can pull from. So we'll never run out of memory because we can pull exactly what we want if we want to do that. We also, for the ease of things, put everything on the decoder for each sound file that we can, so that the customer can choose with just CVs. You know, there's a, I don't know if it's a misconception or a misunderstanding about the idea that with an ESU decoder, you need a local programmer. I don't know if that's going to work with my background here. There we go. This is the interface device that we use for the decoders themselves to add new sounds. You can go out and record your own sounds. You can update the firmware with it. It's just how you talk to it from your computer. You don't need that item. It's there because we want you to have extra ability to be able to add those recordings or do a new firmware update. With our previous version of decoder, the Look Sound 4, and the select decoders, we created something called drive hold and the full throttle features. That was something that was an easy update by using the decoders that were, you know, almost 8 or 9 years old. You could update that feature into it without having to buy anything. If we didn't have that and a new feature came out, you'd have to purchase a new decoder to get that feature into it. I guess for the sake of sales, that's a good thing. But we, you know, and all of our company, all the companies represented here for sure, we're trying to produce something that you can use for as long as possible. So, you know, that's our way of doing it. We do that with not only the decoders, but we also create command stations of our own. We have our larger ecosystem. And for the North American market, we've created a cab control system, which is an Android device, Android Throttle with a knob on it. I'm working from home, so I do have some on the layout. I should have brought one up. But I didn't bring one here to show today, but it's a full color touchscreen. Again, fully updatable off the website. You know, there's 16,000 engines worth, and we're constantly adding updates to that. So we add local pictures, color pictures on it, you know, just new features constantly. We create switch pilots. So for layout control, if it's DCC related, basically we make signal controllers, we make switch controllers, boosters, and all these things. And as time goes on, we find, again, new ways to do things, or we come up with a feature that didn't exist before. So all of those items can have the ability to hook into the computer and update. And others in the industry are doing the same thing. So it's just a way to continue to update and be able to see things with that. On the DCC programming side, in terms of the decoders, it also gives you another interface to be able to see the changes that you're able to make. You know, JMRI is Ash, that probably would have been a good representative here as well. JMRI is pretty important in the DCC world. They create software to be able to control your trains with automation. But the biggest thing is the engine driver, the JMRI side of it. There's other aspects of it. JMRI, there's engine driver. There's ways to control it with your cell phone now. But the JMRI side is more of a drop-down menu and sliders. So instead of changing individual CVs with your command station, you can use a computer screen and text to be able to read what needs to be changed. And ESU has been doing that for many years as well. So if you want to change your function mapping per se, rather than figuring out the algorithm for what CVs need to be changed to do that, we have an on-screen way, you know, a GUI, so that you can see what it is that you're changing. Just slide that slider over to increase your volume or to drop down menus to pick what you want to do next, and click right and you're done. You don't have to remember and change CV by CV, which can cause a lot of errors and having to reset and start over. And again, it's just there are other ways to do that with JMRI and others, but it just gives you an easier way. It's made for our products, so it's more direct. JMRI is made for all products, which is wonderful. I think the industry is much better off because of JMRI and their developers. They're all volunteers, by the way, so I'll throw out a plug for them. If they don't make any money, so if you can help by donating to them, please do. It's a very good thing. I think every one of us here has benefited from JMRI, and a lot of end users as well. So so that's kind of the gist of what we do. We keep busy, of course, with the manufacturers. We work with many of them, not just in North America, but around the world. We have quite a few Australian manufacturers. We work together with Rapido and a couple others in Canada, some smaller ones, as well as TCS. They're kind of a unique company, Rapido. So they're giving options for quite a few companies to be able to get the end user to get what they prefer. So that's a good thing. That keeps us very busy though. And we get a lot of requests is when's this sound coming out? When's that sound coming out? So if you guys do have that question, typically look at what's coming out on the market. That's kind of dictates to all of us here when it comes to sound editing, usually as to what gets done first. Not always though. Times like this, the OEMs are actually still very busy. So even though we haven't been in the office for the last couple of weeks here, we've been very busy in our home offices, engineering and working with the manufacturers and new products to be able to be developed. Just for those who are wondering, we are going back to the office full time on Mondays. So anybody that's had any questions or if they're waiting on a product to be shipped, Monday the 11th, all of that opens back up. We've been, don't tell anybody, but we've been sneaking in a little bit over the past week or two and, getting things ready to go packaged. We do all of our packaging in-house. So, we have everything pulled together. All the orders that have back orders are all ready to go. We've had a couple warranties come in. So anybody who's asked where they're at, they'll be coming out Monday. Every one of the warranties is shipping Monday. That's all caught up. So, if you were waiting on something there, that'll come out right away. So, but I hope that gives you just a little bit of a taste of what we do. It's certainly just a taste. There's a lot more. As far as new products that are coming, there's an awful lot. Those updates that we talked about, one of the new features into the decoders is a feature called Load in the Low Sound 5s. We have the ability to basically by just simply pressing a function button, we can add load, and that will change your momentum and it will change the sounds to make them more, working hard. You can sense built that right into the sound profiles. That's a new feature that's just a simple firmware update. So anybody who has a Low Sound 5 who has bought it maybe a year ago now, since they're still pretty new, they can just do an update and those features will be built in. And those features are tied into the command station and other things that we do. We talked about Burn Lens and the creation of DCC. Something else that Lens developed was Railcom, and ESU has actually taken that over and working with Railcom Plus. And basically it is two-way data communication. There have been discussions with that to add it to the NMRA standards as well. There's other things too that are similar in that, so I won't get into that real in depth. I know TCS is working on some things in that regard too, so if Dan wants to discuss that, they can do some of that too. But basically what Railcom does though is it has all of the devices talking to one another. So with this load feature that we're talking about within our own command station, we can actually just have a slider right on the screen to add load as we want to go. So it just gives us a little bit more control. We have a lot of other kind of secret things that we're working on that you'll see a little bit later in the year. I don't want to tip our hat too much on some of that, but as that comes about, you'll definitely see it. But thank you again, Ken. I know that we'll discuss a little bit more before the night, but again, this was a great idea. I appreciate the fact that since we can't go out in public right now and have all these train shows, that we can all come together, and it gives opportunity for people that have questions to get them answered.
No, that's great, Matt, and thank you very much for chiming in. It's crazy because Matt and ESU, they have so many different products that it's hard to probably squeeze in all in 10 to 15 minutes because they do so many things and well that it's hard to focus in on one product. They offer decoders, systems, accessory units. So they all it's a smorgasbord of DCC items, and there are some questions that I'm sure Matt's actually very good with tech questions, so I'm sure he'll pop back in on the feed and answer some questions when he gets time. So I appreciate
just 1 minute, Ken, if I could.
Yeah.
Again, I don't interrupt.
I'm no
sure
problem. Go ahead.
One of us is in agreement that in a situation like this, it is hard, as you mentioned, to get all of the questions answered. So every one of us has the ability to answer questions afterwards. So if you do get left out, you don't get your question answered, email us. We have, I know on our end, we have our own ESU forum on our website, so that people can chime in there if you have questions. There's, I think every one of our guests here tonight have IO or Yahoo group pages that, you get lots of questions answered. We have on Facebook, we have a cab control and installations page, which is separate from our regular Lokesound page. That is set up just for help. There's some installation questions there. People post what they've done, and if they have questions about how to do something related to any of our products, that's there. So if you don't get your questions here, that's just, I just want to chime in and let you know that we are all very dedicated to helping. So please reach out to us otherwise.
No, that's an excellent point, Matt. And I know everybody on this panel, and I do see a mix of questions. Some are more technical, some are basic and referring for questions for everyone. And all these DCC companies are great with support. I do ask that everybody be patient with the manufacturers, and including us retailers as well right now, due to the virus going on. Some of our staffs are just a little bit short-handed, but we promise that we're working on everybody's questions, and we'll do our best to get back to you. And but you have a great resource panel here, and use them to your knowledge. And all these manufacturers have websites, have tech support lines, forums, like Matt said, YouTube channels. So there's so much information on DCC now just to search than what there was back then. Back then, to learn DCC, you'd have to join a club and learn from someone else. But all these panelists know so much, so it's great to have them, and have them show their knowledge about DCC. But so thank you very much, Matt, and we appreciate that. And we'll kick it off to Dan. Dan from TCS, how you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Yeah, I think I'll segue off of Matt here to plug some of our content and information here as far as support and things like that go. Our website, tcsdcc.com, we do have a tech support page on there. I wrote the whole thing myself. So the page there lists a lot of information on the most common questions that I get asked, and it's a great resource to go to if you're looking for just general information on DCC, you're looking for information on how our decoders work, especially our WOW Sound products, and a couple of other things there, little tidbits of information you may find useful. We also have plenty of videos on our video page and on YouTube that you can look through that gives you demonstrations of our products and their features. And also, we're working actively on a wiki, documentation specifically for our products in a wiki sort of format. So if you're familiar with Wikipedia or anything like that, it's the same sort of format, same sort of layout. You can get information on our new Throttle. That's the #1 place you can go for information on the Throttle right now. And that is accessible through our website as well. But information aside, if you're somebody who prefers to talk to somebody, we do have a support line. You can get in contact with us here at the office. We'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. And also, we're available via email. So if you have questions, we have answers, and we're happy to help. So out of that, I guess I'll start talking a little bit about our products, what we got coming up. Matt also mentioned Railcom and Railcom Plus. That is a feature that we are going to be investing in rather heavily here. It's something that we've supported in the past, but much like a lot of other things, it has evolved over the years. And so we've moved from Railcom to Railcom Plus, which gives you more functionality and more features. And we're happy to support that on almost all of our N-scale products right now. And it's also something we're going to be including on all of our Wow Sound products moving forward into our future revisions. We got a lot of interesting plans for how that's going to work and how we're going to be able to implement those features. I don't think I can really talk about too many of them right now. But one of the biggest things that it's going to allow us to do is, since it is a two-way communication system, is allowing you to be able to talk to the command station from the decoder. Typically, when you're talking about DCC and the communications, it's one way. You've got your command station and you've got your decoder, and it can only go from the command station to the decoder. Railcom allows you to talk back, and so you can get information like you can get the live load of the motor. You can get CV values on the main instead of having to use a programming track. So there's a lot of cool things that it opens up that we're really eager to get a wrangling on. We also are looking to use this for an upcoming product, or I shouldn't say a product, it's a piece of software, the Tcs Depot. It's a piece of software that we're currently working on, which is available on our website now for updating our firmware on our throttles. We have the throttles that have been out for a couple months now. They've been going really well. I'll give you some more information on that in a bit, but the Depot tool is going to be something we're going to be investing in for being able to update the firmware on our products as we move forward. That includes the throttle, that includes our upcoming command station, and it's also going to include our future Wow Sound products as well. We are going to be implementing updatable sounds and updatable firmware in our upcoming decoders. So we're really excited about that. And Railcom is going to allow us to be able to communicate very quick with that program. So you can do things like configuration options and reading and writing information at a very fast speed using this system. I'll dive a little bit into the throttle. That's the number one thing on my docket for this meeting here. This is the UWT 100, and more specifically, this is my UWT 100 as part of the first edition. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it has my name on it. And all of the individuals who placed the pre-order for this throttle got their own special numbered first edition throttle, which I think was really cool. We were really happy to get that together for folks so they can have a little piece of history as we're moving forward. The throttle that we're working with here, the UWT 100, is a Wi-Fi throttle. You may have heard Matt mention a little bit about being able to control trains with your cell phone. There are plenty of people out there right now who are using cell phones, who are using tablets to control their trains. And this throttle is wireless in the same sort of sense, where it allows you to communicate with systems like JMRI or the Wi-Fi modules available from Mrc or Digitrax in the LNWI. And this is a direct communication to your command station, and you don't have any sort of wires holding you back. You got the nice robust infrastructure that Wi-Fi allows. You know, everybody is, I'm sure, full well aware that you go anywhere in the world right now and there's Wi-Fi pretty much. And so it's a robust standard that's been worked on by a lot of different people for a lot of years. And we're working off of the back of that to give you a nice solid product that works really well. One of the other things that we focused on with the throttle, there's two things. There's the ergonomics of the design. You may be able to see here that we took a lot of time to design this to be as you know, a good fit for your hand. It's not going to slip out. It's got a really good weight to it. The weight's nice and balanced in the palm of your hand. And the buttons as well. You know, they're nice and smooth. You know, when you push them, they've got a very nice tactile response to them. And for people who are more familiar with the existing throttles that have been on the market today, that's something that you may like compared to a cell phone or a tablet, where you push a button and I want to know that I pushed the button. I want to be able to feel that. I don't want to have to be looking at it and I want to say, oh, well, yeah, I guess I pushed the button now, didn't I? So that's one of the really big positive feedbacks that we've been getting from people, is that they really like the feel of it. The other thing is we tried to make the throttle very user-friendly. And there's the couple ways that we did that. The number one thing is the very large screen that we have on the throttle, and that allows you to display a lot of information in a reasonably small space. It allows us to give you instructions and information in full text. And the other thing that we have in the throttle is help text. There's a little button on here that you can push. It's got a little question mark on it. And at any point, if you have a question about what something does, you want to know what a feature does, you want to know what a button does, you want to know what a certain option allows you to do, you can push that button. It'll bring up a wall of text that'll explain to you exactly what it is that that feature does, or what options you have there. That's one of my favorite things about it, because it makes the life of a tech support consultant a lot easier. I'm sure that Matt and George can kind of attest to this, is that if you try and make a system very user-friendly that a customer can easily understand, then it makes them a much happier person. They got a lot easier of a user experience out of it. And that was our goal, is make this very friendly, very easy for somebody who's new coming into DCC to be able to understand. So this is also a universal device, and we can connect this to a variety of different systems. We said before about the LNWI from Digitrax, the Wi-Fi module available from MRC. You can also use this with systems like NCE via the USB device that they offer to allow you to connect to a computer. And you can also, there's also a company out of Australia called Wi-Fi-Trax, I believe. They make a plug-in module that plugs directly into your cab bus and creates a Wi-Fi hotspot like the LNWI that you can connect the throttle to as well. So this is a system, or this is a throttle that you only need one of. And if you're somebody who travels a lot, you go between layouts. You got, maybe an NCE system at your home, you got a Digitrax system at your club, or maybe your friend has an MRC system, something like that. This throttle allows you to be able to learn one interface, one system, and get really comfortable with it, and be able to transport that between the different places that you may go. So you never have to really necessarily learn too many different things, learn too many different systems and all of the nuances and the quirks that each one of those systems has. So that's really all I had to say about the throttle. Talk a little bit about some of the other things that are coming up. We've been very happy to be brought on board with our OEMs like Bachmann Trains and Rapido. It's been an honor to be working with those guys. You may be familiar, some of you who may have seen our announcements in the recent past for the ACS 64 from Bachmann that was released, I believe, a year or two ago now. There's also the ON30 trench engine from Bachmann. It's a 262. It was used in World War I. It's a very cool model, and we were happy to be working on that with them as well. And there's also the Decapod, which was recently re-released with TCS's Wow Sound. And there's also the upcoming SC44 Charger, which is including our sound files, our Wow Sound products as well. And specifically in the trench and also the Decapod, we've released a new sort of Steam sound set that we're calling Chuffinity. And Chuffinity is different than anything that we've done before, which typically with a chuff set, if you're talking about Steam, you have that classic puff, 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 you same four sounds that maybe rotate around a little bit and you kind of get some diversity in it. But if you're listening to it for a long time, you're just like, okay, chug, 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 great, it's fine, whatever. So what we did with Chuffinity is we now have a single chuff set that contains over 500 up to 1,000 unique chuffs, each recorded from the same exact locomotive, and it's played in a completely random sequence. And so if you're listening to that locomotive travel down your track, it just sounds like a real locomotive. It's nice and smooth. You don't hear any sort of really repeating patterns or anything like that you can sometimes pick up on. And I gotta say, even compared to our old products, I don't want to go back. I just want to have Chuffinity chuff sets and everything. because it's not like anything else you've heard up to date. So if you get a chance to see from Bachmann, you know, or you have a friend who has a decapod or a trench engine or something like that, definitely want to check that out. Take a listen to it. It's not going to be like anything you've ever heard before. So yeah, it's been a pleasure working with them. We've also gotten on board with Rapido. We're actively working on a project with them right now. Now, due to the virus and stuff like that, things have been a little bit delayed, and we're still, you know, working through that. But we're making headway, and you know, we're really excited for the PAs that are going to be coming up in the next year, I believe. Let's see what else.
Very cool. Yeah, just to chime in, Dan. Yeah, just to chime in there. We actually just received your universal remotes recently, probably you know, right before all this craziness happened. But I've heard great things about it, so we're excited to get our hands and try it once we get back into the office and get our hands on it. And I'm sure all the clubs are excited to try it out as well. But one of the big key points that I've been hearing is that, as you mentioned, you could use it with other manufacturers' systems. So if you go to a club layout, you don't have to worry about other components not working with your unit. So that's a good point that you brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they are shipping. They're available from all of our dealers, such as you guys at TrainWorld, and as well from ourselves. We are still actively shipping, in case anybody was wondering. So if you have an order, you want to place an order, we're shipping out product, no problem, as well as our dealers as well.
Yep. And but like ESU TCS makes all different kinds of products, remotes now, decoders, wires, tape. So they kind of do it all. And since we're kind of like at the halfway point, I'm seeing a mix of questions, technical and also some basic questions. So as kind of like an intermission break, and thank you very much, Dan, for chiming in there and telling us about TCS new products. I just want to say, when you guys are first starting out and kind of looking for a decoder, just some helpful hints that you can help the dealers and also the manufacturers help you better get you the right products. When you call up, just make sure you have the manufacturer of the locomotive that you have, the kind of engine. Is it a diesel? Is it a steam? And perhaps the style. This kind of helps the dealers or manufacturers get a better sense of what exactly you need, because without that information, certain perhaps sound speakers won't fit in certain units, or certain decoders fit certain styles of the engines better. So just make sure you have that information handy, and we can help assist you. But like I said, like Matt and Dan and all these companies have tremendous amounts of resources, and they're more than willing to help give you a hand. And we actually use a lot of their sites and information as well, just to guide our customers. So we appreciate that. Last but not least, George from SoundTraxx. And George, don't forget to actually, I'll unmute yourself. So you're good. You're locked and loaded. And how you doing, George?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I mean, it's been a difficult time with everything that's been going on, but we've been doing our distancing here at the office and at the factory. One thing I do want to point out, kind of talk a little bit about our company here. We've been, as I mentioned earlier, we've been in business 30 years, and we were on the leading edge and the pioneers. And when it comes to sound on board with our locomotives, and with that, we've been able to innovate and continue to push the envelope all the way up to now. Now, during this 30 years of business, our company has been committed to domestic manufacturing. And so that's part of the reason why we're able to be here, is because we do actually manufacture all of our decoders downstairs on our production floor. We do have a full building that was built with the manufacturing of electronics built in mind. We've got a clean room, and our technicians have to wear special anti-static clothing, both shoes and smocks and things like that, to make sure that that they're not contaminating the products. And we also build all that stuff. Now, one of the key points I want to point out is we do hand test every one of our decoders before it leaves our factory. That includes decoders going to our OEM partners like Athearn and other manufacturers out there. Every single one of those decoders are hand tested by our technicians to make sure that we know you're getting a, so that way your decoder is going to work the first time. Now, with that, if anybody's interested in seeing our manufacturing floor, if anybody's, whoop.
Yeah, you're good.
What
now,
happened
George.
here?
You're
okay.
good now, but
all
I
right.
think you.
Well, did you were able to? Okay, I had somebody suddenly was trying to call me here, so I apologize for the interruption. But anyway, as I was saying, we do hand test every one of our decoders before they leave to make sure that you're getting a functioning decoder the first time. And if anybody's interested in seeing this, Ken, our friend James Wright came and visited our factory and did a factory tour, and you can see that on his YouTube channel, JLWII 2000, and just search SoundTraxx, and you'll get a hands-on view of our production facility. This building was built for that. Now, one of the other things we've been able to do during this period, because we do manufacture here, I had a friend of mine that I play hockey with, and they were starting a project locally with all this virus stuff kicked on to build what I called a PAPR mask. And this is a powered air purifying respirator mask. And they knew that we were involved with electronics, and so they asked us if we could help out with that. And so we volunteered our time and our expertise to help solder the wire connections. And that's just one of the benefits of being able to be here locally and help the community, because we were able to offer our services on to that. With that, then let's get into a little bit of the SoundTraxx decoders. Kind of as you mentioned, Ken, I'll kind of feed off a little bit of that. You talked about all the different board formats and different types of decoders that are designed for installation. You and I did a installation live on video. What was it, a few weeks ago, that I think you have archived on your Facebook page, that we can show you how quick and easy a decoder installation can be. But we also have videos on our YouTube channel that I mentioned earlier that you can go through and just see a full complicated installation all the way up to some easy ones. And when it comes to soldering, we also have a soldering class in our webinar that will teach you step-by-step soldering class, so that way you can solder just like the pros. Here at SoundTraxx, because we manufacture here, we are all tested and trained by professional soldering classes. We take solder certification classes regularly to make sure we're up to date, have the skills necessary. And so that class was based on a lot of the things that we've done. Now, with our product, we talked about all the different board formats, and there are different sizes for different installations. So there's a few things you want to take in mind. One of them is what's called stall current. And stall current is very important because a decoder doesn't work the same way a normal traditional power pack works. And so you want to make sure that your motor is going to be within that rated spec. And I'm pretty sure all these other guys will agree with this as well, because if you try to put a 1 amp decoder in a model that's going to stall at 2.5 amps, you're going to overdrive it and it's going to damage the decoder. So we have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel also talking about how to select the best decoder for you. Now, when it comes to our products, as we've mentioned, we have the Tsunami 2, which is our Model Railroader Reader's Choice Award winner for favorite sound decoder 2 years running. We also have our budget sound system, which is called the Econami, which is a play on economy and Tsunami. So it doesn't quite have all the same features as the Tsunami 2, but it does have a lot of features that are comparable to a lot of other companies' high-end products. And then we have our mobile decoders, which are if you want to add a non-sound decoder to run with your sound decoders. Now, when it comes to the Tsunami 2, some of the biggest features that we have built into it is a feature called dynamic digital exhaust. And this is a feature that we've had built into our products, going back into the mid-90s. And this allows the decoder to sense the load on the motor and adjust the sounds of the diesel engine or the exhaust chuff accordingly. Now, with this, of course, there's going to be limitations of how it works. There's a small calibration process to make sure that your decoder is tuned in, but you also have a manual override. So if you want to notch up an extra on your diesel engine, or if you want to make that chuff a little bit more intense, you can manually override it with a function button. Now, when we designed the Tsunami 2, we had and have current and former railroaders on staff. So when it comes to making the sounds and reproducing the sounds, we understand fully how a locomotive works. And so when we're doing that, we can make the sounds interactive. For example, when you use the F11 brakes, which is our brake squeal, if you use that more frequently, it's actually going to internally trigger that compressor to cycle more frequently, because we're trying to recreate that illusion that you're running a real locomotive. And because of that, we want to make sure that that sound is interactive to how you're using it, not just a random noisemaker on there. So with that, we've got a lot of cool features like that. We've got functioning brakes. We've got lighting functions. One of our brand new decoders that we just announced, Kenny, you should be getting them any day now if you haven't already, is an 8-function TSU P&P. And this allows you to have more lights and more control on every single light effect. And so when it comes to, I have a model here that I was working on. This is, I have an installation video on our YouTube channel on how I did the installation on this. But I have a headlight, backup light, ditch lights, number board lights, truck lights, and I've actually got class lights, walkway lights, and all of those are allowed to access all of our lighting functions, including things like constant dim. So your headlights are bright, but your number boards are dimmer. And then one of the cool features we added is on this particular model anyway, is when new locomotives are being serviced in the real world, they blue flag them. Well, if you watch some of the rail cams that are online, you'll see that they put a lot of times they'll put a blue flag on the dash, and it's a blue flashing module that just sits there, and it's right there in the engineer's face, so they can't move it until that blue flag's cleared. And so what we did on this particular model was we used a Fred lighting effect, tied it into the sound of the handbrake, so that now that light will trigger automatically. And that's one of the benefits of using these decoders, is you've got full access to all of the lighting functions, and you can adjust brilliances and things like that with CVs. Frank, one thing to build on something you had said there, when it comes to simplicity, we do try to make it easy, because as you said, nothing's more frustrating for somebody when they see text or something like that that sounds like it's more complicated than it is. So we try to make our users' manuals written very well to make sure that you have full access to control all of the features and all of the effects to your liking. You can do as much of it or as little of it as you like based on just reading the user's guide. And to kind of follow up or to close up here, I'll just kind of say this, a few things. One is, if you do have any questions or problems, feel free to call us anytime. You can call the office, or you can email us, support@soundtraxx.com, or you can email me directly at georgeb@soundtraxx.com, and we'll be happy to help answer the question. Josh Levine, who's our tech support, he's been doing fantastic. He's a modeler, he's a former railroader, and I've been a modeler since I was 14, and I've had a lot of good people take me under the wing and teach me stuff. So I want to really emphasize that, you know, we get questions all the time. I'm sure you guys get it too. Somebody will call up and say, I got a stupid question. My philosophy is there's no stupid questions. Everybody learns differently. Ask your question, let us answer it for you, and let us help you learn, so that way you can fully enjoy your product. And I'm pretty sure all these guys here would agree with me as well in that regard, because everybody learns at different paces, and we just want to make sure we're able to answer the question. So with that, with customer service, we also have our YouTube channel. As I've mentioned a few times, we have short little videos about different features of the decoders and all the features and things. We have little tutorials on how to do installations and stuff like that. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when it comes to new product, we've got a lot of irons in the fire. So we've got some cool stuff coming up over the summer, guys. So stay tuned. Be sure you subscribe to Ken's newsletter there and get all the updates. And with that, I'll yield the floor.
Thank you very much, George. And so we're actually having George ship these brand new decoders to my house. so we could get them locked and loaded. But I believe we were able to get them up, taking pre-orders, but we're getting them in and hopefully shipping them out soon. So check our website, and SoundTraxx has some great decoders. I guess they first started with sound, but SoundTraxx, but they also have non-sound decoders as well. So, and wires and all that stuff. It seems like all these DCC companies have all different unique products, and that we do sell at TrainWorld.com, and we carry all these great manufacturers. So we appreciate all these people for coming on today and sharing their new products, what they sell, some unique, different differentiation of products. So we appreciate that. Now, one thing I wanted to do before we start closing up, I wanted to go around and talk about like one DCC tip that everybody out there should know, or something you think that would be useful for someone that's getting into DCC or is already into DCC. So Matt, do you want to kick it off and maybe perhaps give a tip?
I can. My tip's probably a little bit more associated with our products directly. One of the features that we have in our product is called, different people call it different things. It's an automatic back EMF adjustment. And what that does is it allows the motor to talk basically to the decoder. I'm being very simple in describing it, but essentially the decoder is reading the back EMF from the motor, the electrical impulses from the motor, and it will go through its speed range and it will figure out the best settings for the motor. So you don't have to go in and change all the back EMF settings individually. You can go through this automatic procedure in order to do that. So if you have an engine that maybe isn't starting quite right, or you can see just a little bit of a problem in the range of the speed, usually it's a mechanical thing. So first you want to check that. This isn't going to fix if you've got a piece of ballast in your gears or something along that line. But if you have an older motor, or you maybe have a there's a lot of different reasons for it, but you'll see, and one in particular that I see often is maybe a brass steam engine. When you bring the decoder to a stop, it'll have a little bit of a lurch, or as you go to start, it'll lurch. And basically that's the communication between the back EMF and the motor electrical impulses. So that all being said, the easy way to kind of solve that without having to look for all those CVs to control that, because there's quite a few, all you need to do with an ESU decoder is set CV54 to 0, and you can do this on the main. And then you press F1 on your throttle, and the engine's going to take off for about 4 feet by itself. And it comes to a stop, and your bell will come on, because that's what F1 usually is in most decoders. So once you hear that bell, you know it's done. And it has basically read that motor and looked at its range and made the adjustments internally, and you're finished. So from there, you can take off and start running a little bit more smoothly. So it's a 99% fix. You may still find once in a while you'll still have to do a little bit of extra adjustment, but I would say 99% of the time from there it'll work very well, run very smooth.
Very good. And we'll pass that off to Dan.
Yeah, so if I had a tip, I'd say this is, again, more about our products than DCC in general. Audio Assist is a feature that we have available in all of our sound decoders. For those of you who aren't aware, on TCS products, on our WOW Sound products, we include our entire library of sounds on every decoder that we manufacture. So that gives you the whole library to choose from, and obviously that's a lot of different options. So instead of having to look up a table or have a tool generate the CV values for you, or having to go into a program like JMRI to do your configuration, we have this program that's built into the decoder. It's been in there since our very first version of WOW Sound, and it allows the decoder to talk back to you through the speaker. And just by pushing buttons on your controller, no CV programming whatsoever, you can configure your locomotive for however you like it to sound or however it's supposed to sound. You can change things like the horn, the whistle, the bell. You can change prime movers. You can change chuff sets. You can change the rod clank settings. You can change your lighting effects. It's not all just sound. There's a lot of other things that you have in there as well with that program at your disposal. So you can also do our back EMF calibration for our prototype throttle mode. In our prototype throttle mode, we have the locomotive or the decoder sense the load on the motor, and will then change the notch of your prime mover, or will also change the intensity or volume of your chuff, as well as your snifters and rod clank and the balance of them based on that load. And so for that, not every model's different, or not every model's the same. Every motor's a little bit different. So that calibration is accessible through there as well. Lets you set up your model, gets it sounding really good. And one of my personal favorite features that's also available in Audio Assist is called the user presets. We have a video on how to set this up, but I'll try and give it a really brief explanation here. Is on the SD card that we use to save all of our sounds and load them onto the decoder. We also have a reserved space where you can save the entire configuration of the decoder 3 times. So by default, they're all loaded with all just the default settings. But what that allows you to do is set up to 3 different profiles for your locomotive that you can quickly toggle between in just a couple seconds. So my preference is, like, I have a locomotive that I want to be able to run as a single unit, or I want to be able to run it as a consist member. And maybe I want to change its position in the consist too, where I want to have it be a center unit, or I want to have it be an outside unit. And I can set up the same profile for the locomotive where I get it sounding right. And then I can go in, I can change things like my consist settings, or I can change something else. I can turn off certain lights, I can turn off certain sounds, save that to a different preset. And then I can quickly toggle between the 2 of them if I want to take it out of the consist, or put it into the consist, or shuffle it around, or anything like that. So that feature is one of my personal favorites, and it's available in Audio Assist. And yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things. Also, as another little bit of information. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to say, though, is we've been talking a lot about decoders and them being different and versatile versus, very specified. On our website, TcsDcc.com, we have our installation resources. And on that page, or on those pages, I should say, you can actually look through our documentation of a variety of different locomotives and find the decoder and the kit that is best suited for that model. And if there is something that you have that you didn't find in those resources, that's a great example of why you want to reach out to myself or somebody else at TCS's tech support, along with some pictures or something of your locomotive, some description, and we can definitely get something together for you.
Very cool. And how about you, Frank? Any DCC tips? You're on mute again. Oh, hold on. I'll unmute you. Hold on. Nah, you're good. You're good now.
Good. Okay. It must take a while because I didn't touch anything. But it's a very simple thing. But anytime I'm old-fashioned, so anytime I have a new locomotive, or especially if I've installed a decoder in a locomotive, always use the program track to check the locomotive before you put it on the main line, just to save the possibility. We've seen a lot of times, customers put a decoder in a locomotive and it pops, and because they went right to the main track. So it's something that we put in the instructions. Other companies do the same thing, but it's a simple thing. Always try it on the program track first. And the other thing is, we do have an Mrc Dcc User Group, which is a bunch of railroaders that get on there, and they answer a ton of questions. I monitor it. I don't get on too often, but they answer all questions and help customers out with simple little things. And a lot of times it's just customers may have done something wrong, and these guys guide them in the right direction. So those are my 2 tips, and thanks again for having me.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, Frank, because what I've heard from the manufacturers as well is that most of the cases when people do return product of decoders, it's actually just not programmed properly, or a user end misguidance case. So make sure that it is actual these manufacturers can help walk you through if you are having
Right.
issues. So make sure beforehand you go through all the scenarios, steps, and even reach out to the manufacturer, because they're great to walk you through. And again, most of the time, a lot of these engines that we get back, it was just reprogrammed or set to the wrong line or something. So it's sometimes it's just a very simple fix. But how about you, George? Anything?
Still, there we go.
Sorry, I'll unmute you too.
No worries. 30 lashes. Well, my tip is kind of along similar lines, where you want to test the installation out and take your time. But more importantly, I want to say, be brave. Try things out. For example, we get people call up all the time and say, hey, how can I implement XYZ feature, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And they read the manual, but either something doesn't make sense, or they're having just a disconnect in their brain, whatever. I mean, there's a whole host of different possibilities. But my tip would be to try it. Play with the CV values. I mean, I know with SoundTraxx products, I know you cannot break the decoder by changing CV values. If you could, we didn't do our job very well. And I know this because I'm one of the guys who tests the code verification, and we usually get a manual that's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick that makes us go CV by CV, page by page, value by value throughout the entire roster of that decoder to make sure that nothing, that the feature works the way it's supposed to, it doesn't break something else, and that you're going to get an enjoyable experience out of it. And then worst case, kind of to speak to Ken's point there, is that if you do encounter an issue, always look to reset the decoder CV8 to a value of 8 and cycle the power, because what that's going to do is it's going to basically take the decoder back to the way it was when it left our factory, so that way you'll know if there was something you set inadvertently. For example, I mean, I know I do it every now and then when I'll be pushing CV numbers or function buttons, and I may hit the wrong button in the fast pace, and it happens. And this allows you to go back to reset to make sure that you didn't break the decoder. You just have to go back and that'll set up your values. Just be careful and as you're doing it, to make sure that you don't, reprogram something that caused an issue. And then kind of the other thing, what was mentioned earlier, is we do also have a resource on our website as a decoder selector again. So if you have a question with a particular locomotive, whether it's an Athearn, a Bachmann, Bowser, Intermountain, Atlas model, whatever, we do have most of the major manufacturers and a recommended decoder and speaker installation for both the Tsunami 2 or an Econami installation in that particular locomotive. And again, if you do have questions or get stuck, feel free to call us. We're always here and we're always happy to help.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's a very good point. And all these manufacturers have great knowledge and resources, tips. So if you get stuck, feel free to reach out to them, any one of them. And one of the last questions I wanted to go over, and I think it's important to talk about this, I guess, what do you guys see as the future of DCC, or I guess anything, beyond just DCC? Do you see it more going towards Wi-Fi? Do you see any new products up and coming, or just DCC in general? Matt, you want to kick that off?
Well, I kind of started with it a little bit when I first began. One of the things that, I mean, there's so much. We have a whole raft of projects that are in the works for new items and new features and all of that. But I would say one of the things that could lead into some really exciting times and abilities with DCC could be this Railcom Plus that both Dan and I have discussed a little bit. Again, that's two-way communication. So all of the items within that we talked about the command stations that have it, signal pilots or signal decoders that have it. You could hook it into cameras. You could hook it into all kinds of things, switch machines. So again, all of our products that we make already have that built in. So you could work with block signals based on the detection of a certain locomotive. With Railcom Plus, it's not just in detection. It's not just that, hey, we can see that there's something occupying this block. We can actually see that what engine is occupying the block. We can see an engine number. That's part of the information that goes back and forth. So that engine could look at, and here's a great example of how Railcom could be exciting. That engine could see the next block and know from the signal, well, really through Railcom, what's in the following block. So it can represent that block signal in the decoder, talking back to the command station, because all these things are talking within themselves, which would then transfer to our colored Android throttle, and you could have cab signals right on your throttle. So you want to talk about social distancing. You could actually, I've heard one of our customers using one of our throttles to operate a layout in another country because of, they can hook the, through Wi-Fi, and they can connect back and forth to other layouts with this. So now you could actually even see your signals. You could use it with a video camera right through the screen itself, so you could see what's coming up. So, we're getting into a day and age where a lot of the users have grown up playing video games, and they're very tech savvy. Not all of them. I mean, it's a whole range of customers, but we are a technology company, and DCC is technology. So when we get into that, the younger generations, which are now getting up there themselves in terms of being able to use computers, grow up with computers, they're used to some of this stuff. And to be able to integrate maybe some other hobbies into that computer usage or video game usage, however you want to look at it, to tie that into the hobby of model railroading, it can get pretty exciting, I think. So I think for me, that's one of the things that I'm excited about into the hobby.
Yeah, without a doubt. All good stuff. How about you, Dan? Where do you see the future?
It's kind of funny how similar Matt and I seem to be on wavelengths as far as this sort of stuff goes throughout this whole meeting. Yeah, I agree that I think that the gamification, the possibilities that we have there with DCC is kind of the future. You tend to think of model railroading as an old people's hobby, but that's not true. There's plenty of young guys out there who are interested in this, young girls, and you gotta go out there, you gotta promote it. It's something that we as members of this hobby should be actively going out and promoting to our kids, our family members, even strangers. You walk up to somebody on the street, hey, you like trains? You just made yourself a friend and you got yourself a new fellow model railroader. So the people are the future of DCC, really, and future of the hobby as well. So, gauging that interest and trying to spread the word about how cool this is and how amazing it can be. I'm always still floored with some of the stuff I see coming out from people, the different models that they make, scratch built stuff. There's just it's so cool. It's a really cool hobby. And DCC adds a lot of really cool features and functionality to it. We're talking about Railcom and stuff like that coming out. There's also LCC, which is another 3-letter acronym for layout command control. And that's something that we're going to be integrating with our upcoming command station in addition to DCC. We're marrying them together into one system and also including Railcom. So that gives you 3 different ways to be able to communicate with stuff on your layout. And that LCC, Railcom, it's going to help with that gamification. It's going to give you the ability to interface with a lot more devices. It's going to allow you to get more complicated if you're into that. It's going to help with things like automation, like in the European market, where there's a lot of people who are interested in that, and signaling and block detection. For most people, I think that's a little bit out of reach right now. I know it is for me. I don't know a whole lot about it. And so getting into things like signal systems, when I've seen it on other people's layouts, it's a bit scary, it's a bit daunting. And so as we continue to move forward here with the industry and making things a lot more simple for people, making it more fun, more interactive, I think that's kind of the direction we want to go.
Very well put. And how about you, Frank? And hold on, before you talk, I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Thank you. I would go along with these guys with the feedback systems where there's information flowing in two directions from the cab of the locomotive back to the operator. And I think things like that are going to change the hobby, but still, I think we've got to keep it easy to use for the majority of our customers. And the R&D is a constant thing with all of all the manufacturers. We're always working on new things, and I think it's going to be an evolving hobby. And it always has been, and it will continue that way into the future.
Right. Yeah, very, very well put. And if there comes out a new decoder, then we gotta keep on selling more trains.
That's right.
And how about you, George?
Well, I think I'll kind of go along the same lines where I see more interactive part of the hobby where basically our layouts turn into 3D video games. You know, we've got things like Train Sim and what are the other ones out there, Trains or whatever. A lot of those are basically using prototype scenarios and recreating it into a form on their computer screens. Well, we can use our decoders using all the different command stations and all the different methods of control. We've seen a new product come out called the Proto Throttle, which works really well with a lot of our company's products, that allows you to actually have the feel of a control stand in front of you. So I think the interaction part of it, but on the SoundTraxx side of it, we've got a lot of things up our sleeve. I know it's a short sleeve, but there's a lot of things up here, and we'll have to see what the future holds as far as what SoundTraxx is working on.
Without a doubt. And I just want to thank all these guests on board, and thank you very much for taking the time out tonight. I mean, it's after hours dinner time, and you guys are still hard at work, and we appreciate you guys coming on to really talk about DCC and kind of get people a little more comfortable. And perhaps you don't have DCC right now, but maybe dip your toe into the water, give it a try. Right now is as good a time as there ever was before. Everybody's home, so there's plenty of time to just play around, get familiar with different systems, or try a decoder install. Try to do some DCC soldering or any kind of stuff, or even just research it. I mean, all these manufacturers, we've heard it over and over again, and sorry to keep on repeating, but they have so much resources out there available that there haven't been before in so many ways. I mean, there's digital videos, manuals, phone calls that you call up. We're going to give out George's cell phone number pretty soon, so stay tuned. But there's just so much information. So the whole point and about this whole virtual DCC is hopefully everybody gets a little more information out there, a little more comfortable. And if you already into DC, hopefully you learned about some new products. So hopefully this was very informational for all kinds of model train enthusiasts out there. And if you guys can, please let us know what you would like to see in the future. If you like this style, if you think it should be more technical series, or you think there should be a more basic series, let us know. Give us all a thumbs up on Facebook pages, and watch our YouTube channels, or all these manufacturers. We sell all these great products at TrainWorld.com, so you guys could shop online. And just before we do end, I want to thank everybody on the front lines for protecting us, and just really, this virus has hit everyone and every home. So we really appreciate all the frontline workers out there, and everyone just going to work. So we appreciate it. And thank you guys for joining. And hope all you guys, Matt, Dan, George, Frank, hope you guys had a good time. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate it.
Take care,
All right,
guys.
We'll
Good night.
see you soon. Good night.
you.